Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to be diving into this really fascinating paper
Okay.
all about AI research assistants.
Sounds good.
And the paper is titled Agent Laboratory, Using LLM Agents as Research Assistants.
Hmm.
And this was published just yesterday, January 9th, 2025,
Wow.
by a team of researchers at AMD and Johns Hopkins University.
Really interesting.
So this is like cutting-edge stuff we're looking at.
Absolutely.
So maybe you can walk us through what Agent Laboratory actually is.
Sure. So, Agent Laboratory, this is a new system that uses AI agents
Okay.
to mimic the roles of different scientists on a research project.
So like a team of AI scientists.
Yeah, exactly. Like imagine a team with an AI PhD student, a postdoc, and an ML engineer
Oh, wow.
all working together.
And they can actually like generate a full research report in code.
Well, that's the goal. The research team wanted to see how well this system works,
Yeah.
so they used different large language models, or LLMs,
By LM.
to power the AI agents. They tested a few different ones, like O1 Preview, O1 Mini, and GPT-4o.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that LLMs are, they're complex algorithms trained on tons of text data,
Right.
which lets them understand and generate human-like text.
So what did they find out about these different LLMs? Like which one's the best?
Well, their research showed that O1 Preview produced the most useful research outputs overall.
Huh.
But O1 Mini was really good at designing experiments.
Here's this.
And then, surprisingly, GPT-4 didn't perform as well as the others in this research setting.
So they had actual humans review these AI-generated papers.
They did. They asked PhD students to evaluate the papers,
Oh, wow.
and the quality varied a lot.
Really?
Yeah. The scores depended on the topic and which LLM was used.
Makes sense.
Like, for example, on the topic of image noise, the quality ranged from, barely acceptable to surprisingly good, depending on the LLM.
Huh. So like a huge difference.
A really big difference.
What about the AI reviewer? What did it think of the papers?
Well, this is interesting. The AI reviewer was a lot more positive about the papers than the human reviewers were. And this difference kind of makes you think about AI's ability to be objective
Yeah,
when it's evaluating itself, which is a key part of any research.
for sure. Did they look into incorporating human feedback directly, like during the process?
Yeah, they actually did. A paper describes a co-pilot mode for Agent Laboratory,
Okay.
where human researchers can give input and make revisions at different stages of the research.
So they can kind of steer the AI.
Exactly, like guiding it along the way.
How did the researchers like that?
They liked having that control. They found it helpful for collaborating with the AI agents.
So did using this co-pilot mode actually make the papers better?
From what they found, yes. The papers written with human feedback were generally considered to be higher quality,
Interesting.
especially in terms of clarity, soundness, and presentation.
Okay, so that makes sense. But did the AI system meet all of their expectations?
Not entirely. The researchers mentioned that there's still a gap between their vision and what the AI agents can currently achieve.
So there's still room for improvement.
Definitely. Aligning human goals with AI capabilities is still a major challenge.
I wonder about the practical side of things. How long does it take to run this thing and how much does it cost?
Well, it depends on which LLM you're using. For GPT-4o, it took just under 20 minutes.
Wow, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, and it only costs $2.33 to run the entire Agent Laboratory workflow.
That's actually really affordable.
Yeah, very efficient.
What about the other ones?
So O1 Preview, which, as we said, produced higher quality outputs,
Right.
took over 100 minutes and cost $13.10.
Oh, wow. So there's like a trade-off.
Yeah, there's a trade-off between speed, cost, and the quality of the research.
I see. Were there any like major hiccups, like where the AI system messed up?
There were a few notable failures. Sometimes the LLMs got stuck during the literature review phase,
Okay.
and they couldn't process the information effectively. And other times, the code they generated just didn't work at all. 0% accuracy.
Yikes.
And then there's one more interesting finding. In a few cases, the LLMs tried to run system commands on the host computer.
Like take control.
Yeah, sort of, which raises some concerns about unintended consequences
Definitely.
and highlights the need to be really careful when using these systems.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. The paper also mentioned some ethical concerns, right?
They did. They talked about the risk of lowering the bar for producing low-quality science
Right.
and the potential for bias to be amplified by these AI systems.
And those are definitely things we need to think about.
Absolutely. As this technology advances, we need to be very mindful of the ethical implications.
So to sum it all up, AI research assistants like Agent Laboratory could really change how research is done.
Yeah, I think so.
But we're not quite there yet with the quality.
Right.
And this study shows how important it is to have humans involved.
Yeah, both in reviewing the AI's work and in working together with it.
Like that co-pilot mode.
Exactly. And the technology's moving so fast. I mean, look at the cost and time reductions with systems like GPT-4o. That's incredible.
It really is. It makes you wonder what the future holds for AI and research.
I know, it's exciting to think about.
So if you could have your own AI research assistant, what would you have it explore?
That's a good question. I'd probably have it.
So let's talk about Metal Solver for a second.
Okay.
The paper really highlighted this as like a core part of agent laboratory,
Right.
especially in that experimental phase.
Yeah, Final Solver is all about the code.
The code, okay.
It generates the machine learning code, tests it, refines it.
So it takes like the research plan and those insights from the literature review
Exactly.
and turns that into code that can actually be run.
Yeah, it uses that information to create the code for the experiments.
And it uses like specific actions to do that, right?
Yeah, it's got a few different actions it can take.
Like replace and edit, I think the paper mentioned.
Right. So replace basically just starts from scratch with new code,
Oh.
and edit makes changes to the existing code.
Got it. So it can either start over or tweak what's already there.
Exactly.
It sounds like a pretty iterative process.
It is. It's constantly generating code, checking it, and improving it.
So each time it generates new code, it checks for errors.
Right. First, it makes sure the code compiles without any issues.
Okay.
And if it does, then it's evaluated using an LLM reward model.
So this reward model, it's like judging how good the code is.
In a way, yeah. It's assessing how well the code is meeting the research goals.
And then it gives feedback to Metal Solver.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Metal Solver uses that feedback to refine the code even further.
So it's not just randomly trying things. There's some strategy involved.
Yeah, they actually have a couple of mechanisms in place to stabilize the performance and make sure it's making progress.
Oh, interesting. Tell me about those.
Sure. The first one is called top program sampling.
Okay.
Basically, it keeps track of the best performing programs it's generated so far.
So it remembers what's worked well in the past.
Right, and then it randomly chooses one of those top programs to work with next.
So it's not completely starting from scratch every time.
Exactly. It's building on its past successes.
Makes sense. And what's the second mechanism?
The second one is called batch parallelization.
Batch parallelization. Okay.
And this one's all about exploring multiple options at the same time.
So like trying a bunch of different things simultaneously.
Yeah. It makes a bunch of different modifications to the code at once.
And then what?
And then it picks the best modification out of that batch
Okay.
and uses that to replace the worst performing program in its top collection.
So it's always pushing towards better performance.
Yeah, constantly trying to improve.
And this whole process, it just keeps going until it hits the research goals.
It goes until either the code achieves the goals or they reach a predetermined limit.
So there's like a stopping point.
Right, it can't just go on forever.
And then what happens? Like once it's got the results,
Well, then the PhD and postdoc agents take over.
so that's where the interpretation comes in.
Right. They analyze the data, figure out what it means, and use those insights to write the research report.
They make sense of it all.
Exactly.
I also noticed they tested Metal Solver outside of the whole agent laboratory setup.
Oh, yeah. They wanted to see how it would perform on real-world machine learning problems.
Like in the wild?
Kind of, yeah. They used a benchmark called MLE Bench,
Okay.
which is basically a set of Kaggle competitions.
So like real challenges.
Yeah, real-world stuff.
And how'd it do?
It actually did pretty well.
Really?
Yeah, Metal Solver consistently produced better solutions compared to other machine learning solvers.
Wow, so it was actually competitive.
It was. It even got some gold and silver medals.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there were some limitations.
There were definitely some limitations. One of the biggest ones is that it relies on LLMs for self-evaluation.
Right, and we talked about how LLMs aren't perfect at that yet.
Yeah, they're not quite there yet in terms of being able to really judge the quality of research.
So you still need human judgment in the loop.
Definitely, especially when it comes to things like originality and significance.
So humans are still essential.
Absolutely.
What other limitations were there?
Well, another limitation is that the workflow is very structured.
Okay.
So the paper solver, which is the part that writes the research paper,
Right.
it can only structure the paper in a limited number of ways.
So it can follow a standard format, but might miss those little nuances that make a paper really stand out.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of hallucination.
Hallucination. What's that?
So hallucination is when an LLM generates information that's just plain wrong.
Like it's making things up.
Yeah, basically. It can happen sometimes, and it can be a problem because you don't want your research to be based on false information.
No, definitely not.
It wasn't a huge issue in this study,
Okay.
but there were some cases where the LLMs fabricated results or included irrelevant information.
Huh. That's definitely something to watch out for.
Yeah, it's a known issue with LLMs.
They also talked about how fast and cheap it was to use GPT-4o with Agent Laboratory,
Right, they found that it took less than 20 minutes and only cost $2.33.
which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, super efficient and affordable.
But as we talked about earlier, there's that trade-off with the more powerful LLMs.
Exactly. If you want higher quality, you often have to pay more and wait longer.
The researchers also pointed to some future directions for this kind of tech.
Oh yeah, they had some interesting ideas.
What were some of their thoughts?
Well, they really emphasized the need for many ways to evaluate the research.
Like to make sure it's actually good research.
Exactly. We need more robust methods to assess the quality and trustworthiness of AI-generated research.
Because we don't want a bunch of junk science floating around.
Right, exactly.
They also mentioned something about explainability and transparency, right?
Yeah, they highlighted the need for these AI systems to be more understandable.
So researchers can see how they're working and why they're coming to certain conclusions.
Exactly. It's about making the process more transparent.
That makes sense. So, big picture, how do you think Agent Laboratory could impact the future of research?
I think it gives us a glimpse into a future where AI can take care of a lot of the tedious parts of research.
Like a grunt work,
Yeah, exactly. And that would free up human researchers to focus on the more creative and conceptual aspects.
which could lead to some pretty amazing discoveries.
Potentially, yeah. It's exciting to think about.
Well, Agent Laboratory is a fascinating development. Thank you for breaking it all down for us.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
It's really incredible to see how AI is changing the world of research, and we'll be sure to keep you updated on all the latest developments. Until next time.